Now, Hazel, in your research, were you able to come to any conclusions with this? Were you able to speak with anyone in government or law enforcement that could actually give you answers?
You know, I could speak with individuals within law enforcement and within government who were incredibly sympathetic and who also experienced an enormous sense of frustration. I couldn't reach any conclusions without absolute concrete empirical evidence that there is, for example, collusion between government officials, law enforcement officials and drug traffickers per se. But the more I investigated, the more I started digging, the more questions started arising. Instead of my investigations being received with encouragement and enthusiasm, I felt I was being stopped at every point. People were paying lip service, for example, within the NPA. Lip service was being paid to some of the investigations I was doing with the promise of taking investigations further, even performing arrests, and ultimately nothing was done. And the conclusion that one draws from that is unmistakably what is going down. Why is there not this effort or this will on the part of government or law enforcement to apprehend those who are behind the drug trafficking?
Patricia, did you find these same barriers when not only working on your son's case, but I know you are working to help a lot of South Africans who are behind bars in different countries right now. Are you facing the same barriers?
Yes, I will tell you, in 2005, just after my son was arrested, I actually approached government. She was the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs at that time, Sifana Marva, and I asked questions. I wanted to know why there were just on 30 South Africans held in Mauritius, and yet there were no arrests on this side, and yet they were doing nothing about it. And she eventually got, because what actually happened, I went to Mauritius and the police, when I questioned them, I said, who they give the information to Interpol? They said no. I said, so who do you give it to? So they said, no, they give it to their friend. And they told me the friend's name is Reader, but which actually is Reader. And I asked for his cell number. I came back and I questioned him, and he turned around and told me it's got nothing to do with me. He's not going to tell me anything. I have no rights. And that's what made me then approach the government. So what actually happened was she had instructed the National Commission of Police, which was Jackie Selebig, to start an investigation. In other words, that people must go over and take statements and that they can investigate as to the reason how they ended up there. What happened was there were two officers, one from George and one from Bloemfontein, that were instructed, they were told to get their passports ready. But on the spur of the moment, the whole plan changed, that this Superintendent Reader, who was friends with the Mauritian police, he and the national head of narcotics, plus a senior sup, Brian of Palt, flew to Mauritius. And what actually happened, they went to Mauritius, had a 5-star holiday, and never took a single statement. So then there was no mandate to investigate any of these cases. And the proof I have, I was there. And I had it just happened that I was in Mauritius at the time, and I entered the embassy with a recorder on my body, and I recorded them. They came back, I laid complaints with everybody, you know, the head of crime intelligence, crime unit, Scorpions at that time, everywhere. And at the end of the day, nothing came off. They just covered up everything. I did give all the information eventually to the public protector, who handed it to the ICD at that time, they're now the IPID, with all my recordings, and it was entered as a case called non-service delivery.
This is the thing, and I think that's what happens. One does so much, and in Patricia's case, she's become an absolute crusader for the rights, not only of South Africans incarcerated in Mauritius, but all over. And the point is that from just a practical, investigative, intelligence gathering perspective, one needs to get statements from people who are arrested for drug smuggling in order, step by step, to work one's way up to the apex of the crime syndicate. Because everybody, I mean, drug mules are on the lowest level. They only have a partial understanding of exactly probably who's pulling the reins. But step by step, through good, thorough police investigation, intelligence gathering, one actually can locate the kingpins. And the case of Tessa Berger and the arrest of Cheryl Kwele was a case in point, where a young woman who'd been apprehended in South America through correspondence with her recruiter, who happened to be Cheryl Kwele, managed to provide the most essential information and intelligence which led to the arrest and conviction of a drug kingpin.
Why are we not doing that then in all of these cases that we're going to speak about and have been speaking about?
Do you want to go first?
Patricia, would you like to comment first?
Well, firstly, I would like to say something else. I don't know if you're aware of, in our embassies, there is a SAPS liaising officer who gets all this information. This information goes direct to international relations, and yet international relations told another mother that they decide if it's worth investigating. So somewhere somebody is blocking it. But my point is that all these crimes, alleged crimes, were started on South African soil. And before the South Africans arrive in a certain airport, they have been tipped off. I had an officer calling me who worked on he was investigating officer on Tessa Berger case, and he didn't know, he was under the impression he was just going to ask me, you know, I was going to give him information. But he didn't realize that I have a son that was at that time sitting in Mauritius. And he said, I am the one who calls the foreign airports and informs them that such and such a South African is in possession of drugs. And I said to him, so why are you not arresting them in South Africa? Why are you having them arrested overseas if you have all this information? And he just changed. He said, your secretary will call me and give me his fax number, and I can just fax through any information I have. But at the end of the day, I believe that our country, why would they not want to investigate? Why would they continually allow our people to be recruited and sit in foreign prisons? So something just doesn't add up. In all the years that I have dealt with people, you know, in connection with why no investigations, why this and why that, they just shut the door.
I think part of the problem also, and this also was the research that I undertook in my book, and there was a sense, first of all, that organized crime is just a phenomenon of post-apartheid South Africa, and government corruption is also a post-apartheid phenomenon. It's a complete myth. There is a very evident overlay between what was going on before 1994 and what continued afterwards. And I think, unfortunately, in terms of policing, in terms of law enforcement agencies, there is at the moment a very, very profound dysfunctionalism. We've seen it in cases that have been in court. We've seen it with the suspension of the Hawks boss. We've seen it with the infighting within intelligence circles. There is still a legacy of distrust between the old guard and the new guard. And I think that has actually disabled much of the efficacy of our crime-fighting units. I think also there was the dismantling of our specialized investigative units by Jackie Celebi when he was the police commissioner. That certainly didn't help to strengthen our crime-fighting prowess. We also are a country that's absolutely mired in so many other problems, so many other challenges, many achievements, of course, accomplishments, but I think when it comes to fighting crime, we're kind of spoiled for choice in terms of what to choose, priority-wise, and I think also looking at the cases of drug mules or drug decoys is not high on the priority list, not only because there might be and probably is official corruption within the upper echelons of government, But because there is the perception that, well, okay, these people did commit a crime. Okay, we have so many victims in South Africa, innocent victims. I think there's a reluctance to actually look at the complexities involving people who are apprehended for drug smuggling. It's not always a clear-cut case of, yes, she or he wittingly swallowed the drugs, got caught, got arrested, got convicted. The complexity of it is that there is a very strong link between drug smuggling and human trafficking. And unless we get to the bottom of that and apprehend those who are responsible within the country of destination, namely South Africa, as Patricia said, we're not going to get anywhere.